Good afternoon. 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 And many more, and many more, and many more. Hello, 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 and welcome to Daring Dialogues. I'm your host today, Shantae Charles, and today is Teachable Tuesday. It's Tuesday Inspiration. And so we are going to read something inspirational, and we are going to learn about some more Black history. And if we have Pastor Ben join us today, we will have him to offer some of his thoughts. And if not, we will conclude. This is a short session today. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are my shortest days with me. So let's get right into it. Today's inspirational reading is coming from Meditations for Black Women. And the topic is Define Your Identity. Define your identity. Carol Moseley Braun, politician and lawyer, had this to say: defining myself as opposed to being defined by others is one of the most difficult challenges I face. Meditation. Only I have the power to define my identity as a Black woman. And you could say, only I have the power to define my identity as, and state your identity. Reflection. Black women, in particular, are not a monolith. While we share the same identity, each of us has a story that is unique to our lived experiences. However, the hypervisibility of being a Black woman means that everybody and their mama believes they have a say in how you should show up in this world because of your race and your gender. As a result, you'll have to learn to tune out the white noise and define your womanhood for yourself. In general, this goes for anybody. There will come a time when you will have a reckoning with your intersecting identities. You will have to decide if your life decisions will be influenced by negative stereotypes or by your own definitions. Whichever way you choose to present yourself to the world is valid. Whether you are Black and woman, you are not to be commodified, and that cannot be revoked based on any behavior. If you present to the world however you are, recognize, honor, and understand your own identity. Ultimately, building a strong relationship with your identity will help you not internalize racist or sexist ideologies about yourself. When you're assured about who you are, the lies of things like misogynoir do not attach to your self-image or how you personally view yourself. The way you choose to move through this world, whether you are Black, whether you're white, whether you're other, defines who you are as a person, not the collective. Only you can define who you are as a person, and you are not responsible for how others perceive your identity. Take time to think about your relationship with your own identity. Do you love it or do you love it? So I think that's a good message for today. We have so many people who are spending their time letting everything but themselves be the standard for their life. And I think that that's a helpful message for today. Self-definition. What do you do to participate in your own self-definition? Are you letting other people define you? Are you working on your own definition of yourself? Are you looking outward instead of looking inward? And if you're interested in looking inward, I have a whole program for that and it's called Soul Freedom. And it's where we take a look at different characteristics, different qualities, different virtues that we should have within ourselves. And it's a 33-day program. So you do have to commit to consistently going through the program for 33 days. The first 3 days, you are doing nothing but fasting and prayer. You get to choose your fasting program. You get to decide what kind of prayer that you want to pray. And then the next 30 days is all about diving into those characteristics. So if you're interested in that, when this broadcast does post, I will put the information for the course. It is a self-paced course. Again, it's a 33-day program. The program is $99, and it's going at your own pace, going and doing the lessons in the time frame. Obviously, you want to try to do one per day. But after you get through the training, you have access to me. You can ask me questions during the training time, and I will respond to those questions as you work through the material. Now, let's get to our Black History people. Illustrated Black History is where we have been reading from. And let's take a look at who we're going to learn about today. I think I want to do 3 people. Let's see. I'm putting my markers down here so we can have a marker. Person number 3. Person number 3. I have person number 1 marked already. And I don't know that people know about him. I know people know her. I know her, but I'm not sure if everybody knows her. Let's do her. All right. Get my second marker going. That's number 2. And let's start with number 1. Number 1 for today is a gentleman by the name of Steve Cannon. Don't you just love these expressive visual drawings? Steve Cannon. Let's read up. Steve Cannon was born in 1935 and he passed away in 2019, so fairly recent. Quote from Steve Cannon: "I feel safe around musicians and poets. I'm serious. If an artist is coming down the street, I'll duck behind the car." In 1990, the writer and publisher Steve Cannon founded a literary magazine called A Gathering of the Tribes, a year after glaucoma robbed him of his eyesight. The magazine spawned a come one, come all salon and nonprofit gallery of the same name in his East Village apartment, where visitors from the art and literary communities could share inspired conversation. Musicians made impromptu performances. Writers read their works. Reclusive and introverted artist David Hammonds made an installation on the property. Something was always getting stirred up. A New Orleans native, Cannon moved to New York in 1962, where he found a home with fellow creative spirits who shared interests in art, literature, and music. Cannon once answered when asked why he started his iconic literary magazine, The people I knew down on the Lower East Side complained about not having any place to publish their work. So I started Tribes magazine just to get them to shut up. A gathering of the tribes. The non-print version was a part salon, part jazz concert hall, and always a space where artists and musicians could get together to have raucous conversation. In 2011, after 20 years of putting on performances and taking in all comers, Cannon learned he was being kicked out of his East Village apartment by his landlord. After 4 years of legal battling, he was forced to evacuate the building in 2015. Cannon had lived in that building for 44 years. That's crazy. Cannon and his friends decided to give a bit of ceremony to what most people considered an unceremonious ousting. They held a two-night auction and moving party at Cannon's second-floor apartment, packing up and selling off books, artwork, even pots and pans. At the last minute, Cannon found another apartment 3 blocks away. With just 2 rooms and a kitchen, the new apartment would require that the gathering of tribes be smaller. But until Cannon's death, those gatherings still happened. As his longtime friend Miguel Algarin, a founder of the New York Rican Poets Cafe, once said, "Yeah, plenty of stuff happened there. Most of it fights and thunder." That's kind of terrible, though. He gets booted out of his apartment in 2015 and then he passes away 4 years later. I wonder if that shift in moving did something to his spirit. I'm sure it did. Because if you've been living this literary life and being a creative space and you have a creative energy going somewhere and then somebody ousts you out of your apartment that you've been in for 40 years, that's definitely going to affect you, I think. All right, let's look at our second person today. Some of you have probably heard of her, some of you maybe not. Her name is Annie Turnbo Malone. Mhm. Annie Turnbo Malone was born 1869 and she passed away in 1957. Malone was recorded as America's first Black millionaire, first Black female millionaire, based on reports of $14 million in assets held in 1920 from her beauty and cosmetic enterprises, headquartered in St. Louis and Chicago. Annie Turnbo Malone was born to formerly enslaved parents in Metropolis, Illinois, the 10th of 11 children. Her parents died when she was young and she was raised by an older sister and inspired by an aunt who, as an herbalist, understood the intricacies of plant medicine. Further inspired by her brief exposure to chemistry in her short time in school, Malone launched a hair product that focused on scalp health. She sold shampoo and developed a hair straightening method for Black women that protected the hair follicles. She named it Hair Grower. Malone and her young company moved to St. Louis, Missouri in 1902. After a successful showing at the World's Fair in 1904, she relied on teams that gave public demos and went door to door selling her products. By the end of World War I, Malone had become a millionaire, but she was also dedicated to giving back. She launched Porro College, the first cosmetology school dedicated to Black hair care, in 1918 and was known for her philanthropy throughout the 1920s, specifically at historically Black institutions like Howard University and the Tuskegee Institute. Without Malone, there would be no Madame C.J. Walker, whose name is most often associated with early 20th century Black hair care innovation. Malone employed Walker in her first job as a hair care salesperson, and Walker went on to become a national success story herself. By the 1950s, Porro College had 32 locations throughout the country. Although Black women throughout the African diaspora has always engaged in rituals of well-being, health maintenance, and beautification, Malone developed her forward-thinking business during a time when Black women in America were responding to significant trends in lifestyle and culture created by industrial and economic growth of the early 20th century. Espousing the notion of self-care, doing what made you feel good and look good, was most certainly a revolutionary act. But going beyond sales and service to create a forum for educating others so that they themselves could gain a solid financial footing was another extraordinary step. Malone deserves more credit for that achievement than she's gotten. And I agree. Some of the story of Annie Turnbo Malone can be seen in the film on Madame C.J. Walker. I believe it's still on Amazon, but you can check that out at your leisure. And if you're trying to learn English, one of the best ways to learn is to listen. All right, our last person for today. I do not see my fellow podcaster today, so we will stop here with this final reading. This is Roy DeCarava. I'm probably saying his name wrong. Roy DeCarava or DeCarava. Got my letters flipped there. And again, I love the fact that this artist, he's not only writing about these iconic figures, but he's also illustrating them. So he is the artist and the writer. What a work. So let's learn about him. Roy was born in 1919 and he passed away in 2009. You should be able to look at me and see my work. You should be able to look at my work and see me. Roy DeCarava didn't set out to become a photographer. Seeing the world through a lens was at first part of his process as a painter and printmaker in 1940s New York. He collected images to reference later, but the immediacy and the visceral quality of photographs eventually literally shifted his focus. He went on to become a genre-defining artist of the mid-20th century. His images captured the spectrum of Black life, from the mundane times of everyday existence to the precious, poignant moments of iconic figures such as John Coltrane. DeCarava's 1961 portrait of that groundbreaking musician, a striking black and white image that conveys sonic energy, is housed at the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. Anyone who's heard Coltrane play will recognize what the image achieves. His 1955 best-selling collaborative work with Langston Hughes called The Sweet Flypaper of Life presents a raw yet tender portrayal of Harlem. Accompanied by Hughes's poetry, which narratively concerns itself with a grandmother character named Sister Mary Bradley, the photographs illustrate a Black neighborhood defiant in its isolation, but also whole and celebratory. In Graduation, one image from the book, a girl wearing a pale dress and pale gloves moves through a street marked with distress, trash, and vacancy. An open plot of land seems destined for a looming high-rise, juxtaposed against peeling advertising and fences. Harlem at that time is in transition, DeCarava seems to say with his work. But for whom and to what? Born in Harlem to a Jamaican mother, Elfrida Ferguson, he worked as a young boy shining shoes and delivering newspapers. Ferguson was an amateur photographer herself. She encouraged DeCarava's interest in visual arts with lessons, and he went on to win a scholarship to study art and architecture at Cooper Union. He later won a 1952 Guggenheim Fellowship, an award that enabled him to make photographs full-time. He was the first Black photographer to receive that honor, and he used his access in the art world to push for the acknowledgement of photography as a fine art form by museum institutions and for equity and representation of Black photographers in publications like Life magazine. He was active on the Committee to End Discrimination Against Black Photographers. Just as Frederick Douglass made sitting photographic portraits an aspect of his work as an abolitionist to illustrate his own humanity, and by that humanity of all Black people, 100 years later, DeCarava chose to use the medium of photography to document everyday Black life in the community of Harlem. In an interview, he cited the many ways his art had been categorized over the years. He's been called a documentary photographer, a photographer of people, a street photographer, a jazz photographer, and of course, a Black photographer. But he said, I need all of those to define myself, which goes right back to the beginning of our discussion today, which is choosing to define oneself, having the power of self identification, and the importance of that, the importance of being proud of yourself, the importance of taking care of yourself, the importance of defining who you say you are, not what other people think that you are. Today is also the birthday of two very special people in my life. I want to say shout out and happy birthday to my younger brother, Will, and one of my godsons, Mark. Happy birthday to both of you on today. All right. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host today, Shantae Charles. I want to thank you for your time and your attention, and hopefully you have learned something new and someone new from Black history. Take care, be well, and most importantly, be light. We'll be back here tomorrow at 12 o'clock.